Last week I was talking about famous movie quotes that don't exist. Now let's move on to the second category. This is when the line is almost correct. It's so close, it hardly matters. In Empire Strikes Back, Darth Vader says, "I am your father." He says it to Luke, so to give it context, whenever someone's doing an impression, they say, "Luke, I am your father." But actually in the movie, the full line is, "No, I am your father." But I can see why people say Luke. It's an easy mistake, and it doesn't butcher the line in any way. If anything, it only gives it context. The important part is "I am your father," which is correct. So I file this under who cares. But there's people who swear they saw a version of the movie where he actually says Luke. Given all the changes that were made to Star Wars films over the decades, it's possible, but I doubt it. Why would he need to say Luke? Like who else would he be talking to? In Dirty Harry, the famous line is, "Do you feel lucky, punk?" But the actual line isn't really a line. It's more like a monologue. He's caught the robber, he has the gun pointed at him, and he delivers this intimidating speech saying maybe the gun still has a bullet left or maybe it doesn't. And the last part of the speech is, you've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? And it's a great line, but when people misquote it, all they're saying is, "Do you feel lucky, punk?" I mean that's better than me explaining the whole scene. Just shorten it. I think that works better when out of context. How about Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? What does he sing? What's the lyric? "It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood," right? Well, actually he sings, "It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood." Weird. It's strange to think we've had in our heads wrong all this time, but whether you like to say the or this, it doesn't change the tune or the rhythm. Both variations fit just as well. This kind of thing happens with titles too. The movie Interview with a Vampire is actually called Interview with the Vampire. Again, I think it's a small matter, but I had it wrong too. I don't know why a vampire sounded so much more natural than the vampire, but for some reason, that's what stuck. In Forrest Gump, the famous line is, "Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get." I believe the phrase has existed before the movie. It's like a proverb, but the movie popularized it, and the movie says life was like a box of chocolates. I found it hard to believe, but I watched the clip again, and sure enough, he says was. How could our memories defy us so much? I think the reason it became misquoted was because in the film, he's talking about his mother in past tense. She always used to say life was like a box of chocolates, but in common speech, it makes more sense to say life is like a box of chocolates because you're giving someone general advice. Oh, but guess what? There's a behind-the-scenes clip where he says an alternate take of the line, and in this version, he says is. In Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the Wicked Queen says, "Mirror, mirror on the wall," right? No, actually, she clearly says, "Magic mirror on the wall." It's surprising because mirror, mirror seems like such an old phrase, like you heard it in a nursery rhyme or somewhere. It's so familiar, but you've probably heard it misquoted so many times it's hard to detach from it. It's become mainstream. Even the 2012 version is titled Mirror, Mirror. In Jaws, after Chief Brody first sees the shark up close, he says, "We're going to need a bigger boat." But actually, he says, "You're going to need a bigger boat." I've seen this movie so many times without ever noticing that. If you would have asked me, I would have said, "We're going to need a bigger boat," because there's three guys. They're all in the same situation. They all need the bigger boat. But nope, he's addressing Quint, telling him he's unprepared. In Tarzan the Ape Man from 1932, the famous line is, "Me, Tarzan, you, Jane." But he never says that. I remember when I was a kid, my grandparents would always say that line, and then we rented the movie because I wanted to hear it, and he never said it. He says, "Jane, Tarzan, Jane, Tarzan, Jane." If you really want to say the words correctly, you have to punch the person you're talking to. It's a really great scene, but out of context, it works better when you just say, "Me, Tarzan, you, Jane." Maybe he actually does say it in one of the movies because lots of people forget Tarzan was a big deal. There's more Tarzan movies than you can imagine. James Bond still hasn't caught up. Then there's Casablanca, one of the most critically acclaimed films of all time, always appearing at number 2 under Citizen Kane. The famous quote is, play it again, Sam. Sam being the piano player. You hear it in your head spoken so vividly in Humphrey Bogart's voice, but it's actually Ingrid Bergman who says, play it once, Sam, for old time's sake. Then in a very hushed tone, she says, play it, Sam, and then sing it, Sam. Later, Bogart says, you played it for her, you can play it for me, and then in a very demanding tone, he says, play it. So essentially, he is telling Sam to play it again. It has the same meaning, even though no one in the film actually says the exact words, play it again, Sam. It's virtually there. How much closer could you get? One of the most notable misquoted lines, at least in nerd culture, is "Beam me up, Scotty." Out of all the episodes from the original Star Trek series, can you find one example of Captain Kirk saying that iconic phrase? No, at least not in those exact words, "Beam me up, Scotty," but he sure comes damn close. In the episode The Gamesters of Triskelion, he says Scotty, then Scotty says aye sir, and then Kirk says beam us up. In The Savage Curtain, Kirk says Scotty, beam us up fast. In This Side of Paradise, he says beam me up. In The Doomsday Machine, he says gentlemen, beam me aboard. In Assignment Earth, he says to beam up, Scotty. In The Mark of Gideon, he says have Scotty beam us up. In Arena, he says beam us up. In The Squire of Gothos, he says, beam me up, Mr. Spock. In the animated episode, The Infinite Vulcan, he says, beam us up, Scotty. In the Lorelei Signal, if you want to count Spock, he also says, beam us up, Scotty. In Star Trek Generations, the captain in the opening scene says, beam them out of there, Scotty. And the closest one in Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, Kirk says loud and clear, Scotty, beam me up. So he pretty much says every possible variation. Beam us up, Scotty. Scotty, beam us up. Scotty, beam me up. But wait, oh no, he doesn't say beam me up, Scotty. You'd think somebody would have compiled all the real quotes on YouTube, but they're surprisingly hard to find. I had to get out all the Blu-rays and scan through the episodes to confirm them. It took me a whole day, and while I was doing that, I actually forgot what the misquote was. It's almost as if it originated by someone trying to find the only way he doesn't say it. William Shatner has probably quoted the misquote on numerous occasions since it's become such a famous line. One example I heard of is in the audio adaptation of his novel, Star Trek: The Ashes of Eden. My opinion of this misquote is that it doesn't really matter how you say it because there doesn't really exist a correct way. Every time Kirk said it, it was always different. Either way, beaming up was a big part of the show. You can reference it using any variation. We're not done. Next week, the challenge grows. I'll talk more about the elusive quotes that I couldn't really get to the bottom of.